Brodie Kane, welcome to Between Two Beers.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you for this highly esteemed...
When was the last time you had an export gold?
Oh, the face!
Ooh. It would have been some years.
Yeah?
But look, it's Monday
2000s?
night. And
Do you drink a beer on occasion?
I'm a real basic bitch when it comes to a beer. I like a Corona,
Okay.
really. Pretty much nothing too... I don't like the hoppy things. I wish I did, but I don't.
I feel like export's quite palatable.
Yeah, this is actually not... But it was just that first hit, really.
It was a shock to the system.
Yeah, but it's fine. It's actually quite good.
Yeah.
V Pure is more your sort of...
Do you know what's actually happening at the moment?
No.
It's actually breaking news. There is a V Pure shortage in
Oh, no.
Auckland. So
Shit.
no, I'm serious.
I
My local dairy, he's out of stock twice, and he's mortified, can't get it. And then so there's about within the radius of where I live, there's 4 petrol stations that I went to the other day. Not one of them.
Yeah, I listened to the air.
Really?
Yeah.
It was on the episode.
Yeah.
The latest episode. I listened to it.
So it's I don't know what's happening. So never mind the cost of living. Where are my V's?
Yeah.
Where are the V's?
Yeah.
Get them sent up from Christchurch.
They'll be on those bloody boats that are parked out in the Hodaki Gulf.
A
They
lot.
just sit out there, never come in. So anyway, apart from that, but yeah, so I've had to resort to cans of Pure V because there's no bottles.
Is there a difference?
Yeah, it hits different because a glass bottle I feel like holds the fizz better of anything, to be honest.
I've always been I preferred cans with all my drinks, if that's okay for me to say.
Yeah. Hey, this is your episode, bro.
And
No,
that's
I'm a glass bottle person.
that's vessel chat.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's Vessel Chat done.
Yes.
Brodie Kane, I feel like you're everywhere at the moment. Do you feel like
Well, that's
you...
terrible. You don't want to be you don't want to be thrashing people with yourself, do you?
No.
Do you?
I don't know.
I don't know. Is that not a good thing? Okay, so Dancing with the Stars has just finished, and you've sort of rebounded back from that. But is this the height of Brodie Kane? Like,
Oh, look, I feel like it's an interesting time because, it's really exciting as well because I was supposed to move up to Auckland in September last year to just sort of get back into the hustle of Auckland, really, and there's a lot more opportunities, and this is where a lot of things happen. And so then that sort of, obviously, Auckland went into lockdown for slightly a bit longer than everyone else, and so I pushed it out and pushed it out and kept pushing it out, and then it was like, no, we'll make that a next year job. And so then when I scheduled the move, then sort of dancing came in sort of at the same time. So it was like I moved up here, and then a few weeks after, 2 or 3 weeks after moving up here, it was on, you know. So I actually really haven't had a chance to actually take stock. And even before moving up here, I was training really heavily for the Coast to Coast, which kind of didn't happen, and we kind of did our own version. So it's actually been a really hectic year.
yeah.
So, I mean, and amazingly hectic as well. And I'm just really happy to be back up here, and it feels good, and dancing was really fun, and do you know what? It was a pleasure to be back on TV. I have always enjoyed my TV career. This obviously looked slightly different. But yeah, I feel I'm really in a good place being back up here and seeing sort of what the second part of the year is going to bring.
We're going to tell the Brodie Kane story, but I kind of want to start there at the Dancing with the Stars stuff because I followed it, and I've been following you on Instagram, and I've been seeing the outpouring of emotion after the final and the dancing and going to Raro and sort of taking some time to whatever, clear your mind and get back. But has it changed you? Like, has that whole experience fundamentally changed you in any way?
I don't know if it's changed me as a person, but some incredible lessons about yourself and how to sort of like navigate those. And so I feel like I look at things that I've done in the past which have been hard, like running a marathon or the army, which I'm sure we'll probably chat about, but this was the longest, most extended period of time where you were out of your comfort zone. So that was the most sort of foreign feeling. Like, you know, if I'm training for something and I'm running, I know, you know, like I'm running. It might get hard, I might get tired, but I know what to expect. Whereas this was just, you actually were completely, at times, not even in control of your emotions. So that kind of part of it was really, really new. And actually what I learnt more, and I think it's great to always be trying to work on it, but you figure out parts of your personality that are okay to have, but like, I'll give you an example. I'm extremely hard on myself. So that was more evident in dancing, because I'd be frustrated at myself because I want to be the best within myself. And so that was a really wasted emotion, which Enrique and I sort of he sort of identified that pretty early on. He's like, you are so hard on yourself. This is wasting time. Like, you're wasting energy beating yourself up all the time. So it was interesting to learn that kind of can, you think, oh, well, it's okay to be competitive and that's a good thing, but that probably really came into the forefront. And it was like, come on, you are being too hard on yourself. Let's stop that, because you've got shit to do. So definitely learnt more about yourself as a person and sort of how to handle challenges along the way, I guess.
I feel like that's a trait of people who are successful and rise to the top of their fields. You have to be hard on yourself in order to get there and to improve. But then, yeah, maybe it's a little bit of tailoring that and figuring you don't need to be that hard, right?
Yeah, well, and I think we put the pressure on ourselves because we feel like there's a perception, or people are watching, and if you don't, then you'll fail, or people will see through that, or whatever. But it actually isn't that at all. But I do feel as well, like, the other thing I did learn, and I've actually learned this a bit with competing, training and competing for an event, you're actually allowed to celebrate how well you did. And I feel like what we're guilty of is when we've finished a task in life, or we've achieved something, because we're sort of like, oh, she'll be right, no, don't make a fuss, Kiwis. We feel like we have to put a full stop on it and move on. And I don't think we should do that. And so we feel like, oh, my friends or people will be like, oh gosh, is she going to talk about dancing again? Oh, here she goes. And you actually just have to be like, well, that made me happy. And so reliving that, or chatting or sharing memories, or, I always talk about Queenstown Marathon being a horrific day, but I talk about that fondly because it helped shape me, and it's a good thing to relive our successes. And I don't think we do that enough. I feel like we want to put a full stop because we don't want people to think that we're just wanking on about ourselves. But in actual fact, I feel like that we have to learn that we should talk about our successes, and we should share our memories and our stories with others, and encourage everyone to do that. So that's another thing, because I'm really proud of how well I did in dancing. Like, I'm really I watch it back and I'm like, what? That's not you. And so I'm really proud of that. And so I'm not going to just be like, cool, okay, I have to now figure out what the next thing is so that I've got something else to talk about. Yeah. I'm just going to relish in it.
Let's keep wanking on about it.
Okay.
A couple of people that we've had on have been on Dancing with the Stars before, and I'm a reality show, like, I consume a lot of reality shows.
Yeah.
Is it the realest of the reality shows? Like, the training, the dedication, the all-consuming nature of it?
Yeah. Well, I would think so. I haven't been on any other reality shows
yet,
but I imagine
Fuckboy Island's coming up.
Fuckboy Island, my sweet Jesus.
Sorry.
Is it though, or is it? Can we cancel it before it
True
gets
story.
makes the bloody airwaves?
I didn't into it. Please carry on about dancing.
I don't think that would be that hard, though, would it? Well, no. So, yes, I absolutely think so, because you are having to learn something that you don't know how to do. And you're getting thrown in this kind of like pressure cooker situation. And, which so many people, it really surprised me, so many people don't realise that, unlike other reality shows, it's live every week. So, all the other ones are filmed and then packaged up and it's, not live. So the fact that you're actually dancing on television live every weekend is quite hard out. So I would say this one, I guess it's probably, the cooking shows are quite hard, but they can cook, can't they?
I guess
suppose.
So.
Was it a very quick yes when you got asked to be
Yes.
on the show?
Yep.
Immediate.
I just, like, I've always thought that's been my favourite of all the reality shows over the years, and what a cool skill to learn, you know. And
how do they approach you? Is it an email or a call?
Through your agent.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I didn't like, I kind of was like, we'll be cool, but yes, you know.
I will definitely be doing that.
I'll have to check my diary.
Yeah.
But I've always thought, how cool would it be to learn to dance, and then also like have all the flash like sparkly frocks,
Right.
and you know, like so. I was like, I didn't even have to think.
How long between yes and this is your dance partner Enrique and this is when the show starts? Like, what's that time frame look like?
Well, mine was quite quick. I know that there was like some people that were supposed to be on the show last year, and then the show got cancelled and stuff. So I think there was a few people that their process was probably longer, but mine was like February. So pretty much when I was training for Coast to Coast, it was sort of kicking off then.
And then
We knew then that that it would be on air on like the 29th or whatever of April it was, and then I met Enrique. So we had to go and shoot promos. I had to go and shoot promos about 6 or 7 weeks before, and then you couldn't say anything. I'm terrible at keeping secrets.
How many people did you tell?
Oh, heaps.
Yeah, everyone. Yeah.
Brodie
Like,
wants to
they
go
were
out
very
dancing
good at-
again.
Very, very, very good at keeping secrets. And then it obviously got released, and then it got released at the start of April maybe, and then you trained for 4 weeks before the first live show. So we met for like 5 weeks prior or whatever for the promos, and then started training 4 weeks
And
before.
did you do any of your own training when you found out? Like, started going out a few more times?
No. I knew that there was probably absolutely not a damn thing that I could bring that would.
no Googling the tango and the cha-cha?
No, I didn't do any of that.
One of our friends has suggested that the Proud Mary dance was one that would come
That's
out
in your
every
locker.
time you'd drink.
Well, so the Proud Mary dance it's one of my favourite, obviously one of my favourite songs, and it's so good how it's just got the big sexy slow bit at the front, and then boom, one of the great original drops really when you think about it. and it's just fast, and it's Tina Turner. So I've always loved it, and obviously she was actually the first concert I ever went to.
Wow.
I think Mum, we were trying to think about it. I feel like it was 96. It was around then. I'd have to Google, but it was Tina Turner at Lancaster Park in Christchurch. And Mum took me,
How old's Brodie Kane in
like
96?
I'm sure I was like 6. Well, I think I was either 6 or 7 or 8, like in that vicinity, but young, right?
It's an interesting first concert, 6 or 7.
Yeah, we are a big music family,
Okay.
and Mum took me and took a beer crate an empty one, a beer crate so that I could stand on it and see the concert.
That's nice.
So she's always been a big love in our family, but yeah, probably the past few years, like I've just seen enough of her doing all her moves and that if I get a little bit.
Everyone's got a little bit of that in their
Everyone's got a little bit of that.
Yeah.
in their locker when they go to a wedding reception or
Yeah. But
30th
then
or 40th.
but often when you do the hands and the head drop and then you pull the head back, if the first few times I did that, I would wake up the next morning and I couldn't move my neck, and I was like, what happened last night? Like, why? 'Cause, even when you're like a pretty fit, healthy person, you're like, I can't. Where do we? No, what? Oh,
Yeah.
Proud Mary.
Mm.
So, and then it just got a bit notorious with the pals who would like
It was
they would see when I tipped over to like, yeah, no, she's ready. And quite often, various households would be like, I've got a costume for you. And I'd be like, oh, no, I couldn't possibly do that. Okay, fine. So, yeah, so it's become a bit of a running joke. And then it was like, imagine if I could dance to it properly.
I feel like you referenced it in one of the interviews or something in the lead up to the final, right?
Yeah, I sort of, I guess, tried to bribe people and was like, if you keep me here, you will get to see me perform the greatest song ever.
Yeah.
To grace Dancing with the Stars,
Once you get really good at that dance, like I saw some videos of you and Jazz and Rarotonga like doing it. It looked like it at the end of a big drunken night? Like, does it come out all the time since then?
Party trick. New party trick.
Well, the tricky thing is as well, there's a couple of real key pieces that I need a bloke for, like, in you know, swinging around under, like, my legs going around. So I have to kind of figure out, I'm actually meeting up with Enrique this week, so we'll have to figure out, like,
What a name, by the way.
version that I can do, that I'll just do by myself. You know, like, because otherwise...
Yeah.
But there's some great bits. There's some great bits in it that you can take to the D floor.
Yeah.
And to be honest, a good chunk of that performance was homage to Tina and stuff that I kind of already was doing, but way more finessed.
I always found my quads gave out.
Yeah.
On
the little runs.
The tiptoeing thing, yeah.
That
His
absolutely.
leg's doing a lot of work.
I'm a power bottom, you know that.
No, it's honestly that one was absolutely brutal because what I don't think people realise as well, over the weekend of dancing, you're in there all day Saturday.
Yeah, this is what I want to understand, is the hours.
So you're literally training every day. And then you get to Saturday. Saturday, you're pretty much there from like 8 a.m. till 5. And that's nails, spray tan, but also rehearsing. And so basically you've got to go in. And we learnt 2 dances every week, right? Whether it was group dances or towards the end, the individual ones.
Those group ones are
2
fascinating too.
every week. So you had to, on the Saturday, that's when the director is figuring out how he's going to camera block it. So you have to go in and you dance your dances at least 5 times over and over again. So in a row. Bang, smash it out, go again. They're trying to figure out how to make it look awesome, right? And so then that sort of takes a bit of time. Then you group ones, and then we all have to rehearse the opener as well. So that's Saturday, and then Sunday, again, you're there all day, and you do 5 more where the camera crew are practicing all their shots. So over and over and over again, and then your second lot over and over again. Then you go and sit in here and make up for like 3 hours in between, and then you do a dress rehearsal, and then there's a live show. So it's full noise.
And is every performance you're having to give the full performance, or are you holding back?
Pretty much, you can kind of like usually number 1 is just slightly a bit of a warm up. If you've got a few big lifts as well, you'll tell the director like, oh, we're going to do the lifts in 2, 3, and 5, or you know. But yeah, it's pretty full on. By Monday night, you're absolutely fucked, and emotionally as well, because someone's gone home, and you're so tired because I didn't sleep very well. Like, I was always having these midnight meetings and shit, and then Tuesday you're like, cool, let's learn 2 new dances.
And is it legit, like, do they tell you what dances you're going to learn, or have you got like a...
You do know a little bit in advance, yeah.
Like a tick sheet they give you, like, you're going to have to do the
there's no
rumba.
tick sheet per se.
Right.
But like next week.
I'm a fucking big fan.
Yeah,
like,
I can tell, mate.
So you do get a good idea of what you're going to do, so that you've got to. But it also your individual dance alternates each week from Latin to ballroom. Yeah.
And you didn't blow your load on any of the rehearsal dances before, like, a performance?
Oh, so
that's a dance. That's a dance
Is
phrase.
that a dance?
That's a dance phrase.
Interesting. I've not heard that in any of the dance movies like Step Up or anything, but fine.
It's in the director's cut.
Funnily enough, I always absolutely had a meltdown. I was terrible in all of my dress rehearsals. It actually, to the point where it became a running joke. Like, Enrique was like, here we go. Here we go. Something would always, like, because I think I actually figured it out by the last weekend. You'd gone in, you'd done all your stuff on the Saturday, then you'd done all your in the morning on the Sunday. Then you'd sat for 3 hours in your thoughts and hair and makeup. So your energy just was flat. And then you've got to chuck your stuff on and go and belt it out once, and you kind of were like, oh, the judges are watching this one as well, and you were like, oh. And so it was week 2, I think, the first was my Foxtrot, which I will still never be over how shit they marked that. Take that anger to the grave, quite frankly. Anyway, but I hooked the bottom of my skirt on my heel and was just like, and then sort of the minute that happens, you're almost a little bit behind, and then you're trying to catch up, and then before you know it, it's over, and you're like, fuck, damn it. And then couple of times that happened, like in Proud Mary, the little teeny tiny gold dress, I hadn't actually worn that in any of the dress rehearsals because I'd worn something that wasn't right. So it was like, right, we're going to go with this little one. And so when I did the dress rehearsal, that was the last final dress rehearsal, I ripped the black thing off and was like, holy shit, I don't think I've got anything on. It was so small. So I was like, looked down. And then I was like, oh, no, you're fine. But then I was like, oh, I'm running late. Shit, I got to get down the stairs. And And then it was over. And I was like, fuck, it's happened again. Oh, no. And for that one, it was like, I need to soak up every second of this. And then I, like, every week, came to the big main one, bang, fine, smashed it. Yeah.
It's cool.
I'm gonna loop back to the dance chat at the end, but I'm gonna move us along. And I want to start sort of painting the picture of Brodie Kane. And I found two bits that I want to kind of get you to link up, if possible, that are really interesting to me. So one is that your mum once swum the Cook Strait, and the other one is that you used to do surf club with Lisa Carrington.
Oh yes.
So there's obviously a big connection to the water through your family and your upbringing. What start with your mum and then move on to Lisa.
Well, so mum is one of 9 kids, and they grew up in Wellington, and her dad was a very good surf lifesaver, competed for New Zealand, beat Australia 100 years ago, and grandma did surf lifesaving. So pretty much almost her maiden name was Watt, and so they all grew up at the beach around surf club and competition. So a lot of her and her siblings did surf lifesaving. And so then naturally when I was growing up, it was the same for me. You know, like we always lived by the beach. It wasn't like you have to do that, but it was like, oh, well, we're down at the beach, so we may as well go to Nippers. So we had I've always grown up involved in that in one way, shape or the other. Fascinating thing about mum is, so she swam the Cook Strait when she was 40.
Which is like 22 kilometres.
Good.
Well, that's the minimum.
That's the minimum.
That's the minimum, which not a lot of people do, because that piece of water is so notorious that you can plot the day to try and get everything right, and it'll just whip up and change. So mum, when on her successful attempt, I think she did 32 Ks, because the winds and the tides change. So so when she was 16 years old, she actually paced with a guy called Perry Cameron, who was one of the early guys to swim the Cook Strait, and she always thought back then that would be so cool to do. And had always thought about it. And then her good mate Russell and her were on the whiskies on her 40th birthday, which was in September. And then that's when they drunk on it and were like, it's time.
Oh, wow.
And so that was September, and she successfully completed it in March of 1996 after a failed attempt 4 weeks prior. Yeah.
Were you on the boat?
I was 10, and they didn't end up taking me out. I was supposed to go and at least do a little bit of swimming with her as well, but it was quite rough, and they ended up taking me out by Mana. So no, I wasn't. I was in Wellington waiting for her.
Because Stephen's going to do a long open water swim, aren't you?
That's the goal. Yeah, I'm sort of trying to train to do a 10K open water.
Oh gosh.
The story is a guy that can't swim. You know,
can't swim?
Well, a few months ago when I started, I would do 2 lengths in the pool and be exhausted.
Yeah.
So I was like, shit, it would be cool to video the start and then work your way to doing this big thing. But COVID sort of knocked me back a month. But yeah, it's still on the card.
Backstory to that is he did a challenge a couple of years ago where he ran a kilometre as fast as Ulid Kipchoge ran marathon.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Did you do it?
2:52.
Did you do it?
To the second. Yeah. So
was it horrific?
It was hard. It was the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like 3 months of training every day just to get there. The whole point of it was to show how insanely fast he was running.
Yeah.
Right? So like the punchline at the end was Stephen completed his 1 kilometre in 2:52. He's got 41 kilometres to go.
Yeah, that's wild, eh?
So anyway, yeah, I sort of got into, I realised how great it was to set these big goals and achieve them.
Yeah.
Which is why your mum's story is so incredible, like 34 kilometres. That's great.
Yeah.
But linking it back to you, so the link to Lisa Carrington, so you've obviously got this sort of pedigree of greatness in the water from your family. Does that sort of link up to her?
Well, I was I was quite heavily involved in surf lifesaving in my teens, which was awesome, and competed for like Canterbury, and this was back in the great years where there was still the Kellogg Surf League up at the Mount, and it was on telly and stuff like that. And so, and we had this great, like in my age group, there's her, there's a number of chicks that have made the Olympics and Commonwealth. The kayaking is Commonwealth Games, but like have won world titles and that, like Erin Taylor and Tennille Hatton, Caitlin Ruddle. You know, like they're all clubbies that have turned to kayaking and absolutely smashed it. And so we just competed against each other. She competed for Whakatane and
Clubbies the term, by the way. Sorry.
Clubbies. Yeah.
Is that a?
Yep.
Because
it's not. It's just a normal. Yep. Clubbies.
It's in the notes, and I thought that was an error.
Clubby days.
Clubby days.
Yeah. Clubbies. So yeah, that's absolutely. It's not offensive. It's not.
No, it's just bringing the audience into the little niche group.
Yes.
Clubbies.
Yes, clubbies.
Okay.
And so we were all like but it was a real community sport, really. Like you'd all be at the beach all day. Everyone was experiencing either the shit weather or it's too hot or the surf's massive, or, you know. So we were all pretty close and got along really well. And yeah, she was just one of the awesome chicks that was in my age group. And you know, she obviously made her decision to go to kayaking. And I remember, and she's such a beautiful woman too, like such a wonderful girl. And I remember when I hadn't seen her in probably like a few years, and obviously she was off away doing the Olympics, and the first Olympics must have been London. It was her first gold. And I remember I'd been out on the piss all day.
Were you in London?
Auckland? No, I was in Auckland. And we went down to, I think it was like one of those, like maybe I want to say like the Britomart Country Club or something like that down there.
1885. Is it?
Oh, one of those, I think. I feel like it was quite cool at the time. And so we went in there, and her final was due to be on at like 8:30. And so I was like, well, guys, we've got a fine. We're going to watch this. We're going to get in there.
For the clubbies.
Yeah. And so then I managed to convince the man behind the bar, and he was not very impressed. And I was like, trust me, if you put this on with sound, none of this fucking Nelly in the background. I want the sound, you know.
Nelly in the background sets the scene.
Yeah, you know, none of this bloody music for the doof doof. And so they did put it on, and she won. And I mean, as I said, I had a light head of steam, so I was a little bit emotional and probably extra emotion. And then my friends remind me of the story as it's 2012, so yes, I had a durry in my hand.
We all did.
We all did. And so I had a durry in one hand and like a vodka Red Bull in the other. And I was sort of I was wiping tears away, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so proud of her. We used to race together. I even beat her. Oh my God. And my mates were like, and look at her.
Yeah.
And look at the state of you. And I was just like, oh fuck. But yeah, so and so I always have a bit of a laugh at her, because I did, like, I've got photos of me on the number one, like with my gold medal, and they've got a silver medal.
Yeah.
Wow.
In the under 19 women's double ski. Yeah.
What were her arms like back then? Were they as jacked as they are?
No.
Yeah.
Because she was only like 17. But she was always an incredible athlete. Like, I was never surprised that she just was destined for wonderful things, but just so down to earth as well. But yeah, I still have her on about it. Like, and she was like, she reckoned the last time I had her on about it, last time she became the greatest
Olympic athlete ever.
Still like, hey, that time. And
remember?
And she's like, oh. And she actually, it's because we did a Joe Bro Instagram live with all the athletes when they were stuck back in, coming back in ISO. And I said it to her, and she's like, yeah, but nah, weren't you like in an older age group? And I was like, bitch, get out. We were in the same age group. Like, it was under 19. Maybe you were under 16. I don't care. It
That's
doesn't
how
matter.
the story goes. That's how it will always go.
All right, we've got to agree on it. So, but yeah, so that's very cool. And so when you watch people like her, and as I said, a few of the other chicks that have gone through, it's pretty cool when they've come from like a real grassroots sport where it just has revolved around our passion for growing up at the beach is pretty amazing.
I've got a few little lines here, and I'm not really sure where they're going to go. So
Okay.
well, I'm just going to put them out there. Tell us about the one time when you found yourself leading the Open Woman Iron Woman final at Surf Lifesaving Nationals.
Do you know what's funny about this? And it kind of links up to dancing in a funny way, because obviously I got second, and everyone always, like people are like, oh, no one remembers second. Well, they will, quite frankly. and this is quite funny because the Open Women's Ironman at Oakura Beach, Taranaki, right? And this is the same kind of story. No one remembers where I got, but they remember, like, people will still be like, oh, I remember that Iron Woman. I'm like, I do too. But no one remembers where I got. And so basically what happened was, it was my last year competing as well, because I was going to uni, and like any sport, politics does get in the way. And the Sunday of the Nationals, I got dropped for the Open Women's ski. I'd had 2 titles in under 19. I was an Open, but so-and-so's coach didn't want me in the thing. So it was like, and I was just like, I found out that morning, it was so just textbook kind of what happens, and you're just like, I don't need to do this. Like, I don't need to be dropped on a Sunday morning at 6 a.m. and be crying on the beach, and this is a bit shit, and I just want to go to uni and study and get pissed, and this is shit. Mum was like, no, come on, like, fuck them, we'll show them. I was like, oh, yeah, fine. And so I did a couple of races in the morning, and then the iron, and I'd actually said to her, I was like, there's not a big surf running. If it's heats and then semis or whatever, I'm not doing heats. If it's straight final, I'm in.
Straight final.
Yeah, straight final. Because I think the maximum you can have is maybe 20 or so. And so it was like, they hauled us all in for the heats, and then they were like, yeah, straight final. It was like, sweet. Okay, so it was in the afternoon, beautiful afternoon, not like a nice little wave running, just a nice little set building every now and then. And so I was like, oh, I can't. I don't want to do it. Swim first, kneeboard, surf ski. No. Yes, something like that. Swim first though, board ski. And so away we
What's
went.
a ski?
Surf ski is like the long, so like you think of a kayak, but a surf version of it. So you're sitting on top of it.
You have a thing, an oar?
No, a paddle.
All right, okay.
So you're paddling
And the other
both
one's
sides.
on the knees.
On the knees doing
that
yeah,
one.
yeah.
Okay, just to set the scene.
Yes. And so, and then swim obviously just head down.
I got that
Freestyle.
one. I got that one.
Good,
Yeah.
good. So away we go, and so swim around the buoys, and then I'm sort of like in the middle of the pack, right? And then I feel a little lift, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. Put your head down, wave. It's like, yay, all the way in. Held my head down, just like hold my breath. Do your like couple of strokes until my hand hit the sand, and I stood up, and the whole beach erupted, and Gums McClurg, who's the guy that's been the commentator for like 800 years, was just like, holy shit. And then I was like, what's happening? What is everyone doing? And then I turned around and was like, oh no. I just wanted this to be a low-key afternoon. Just wanted to get this over and done with, and it was like, shit, oh no. So I'm like running along, everyone's screaming, because quite a few people knew my family, and enough people knew what had happened that day, and I was like, oh my god, shit. So then my gear handler is a lovely friend of mine called Kate Dodds, and she's just like, get on your fucking board and go. I'm like, no. And so there's these 3 chicks from Muriwai Surf Club who at the time were living and training in Australia and doing very well in Australia. And so the first one, I jump on my paddle board, and I'm paddling away, and then she just goes, woof, like straight past me. I'm like, try and jump on the back of her wash. No. I was like, oh, well, not winning, that's fine. Cool. So I get round the board, still in second, just hanging in there for dear life. And then jump on the ski, and then round the cans, the second bloody Muriwai girl got me. And then it was like, oh, well, sweet as. Cool. And then I'm on a little wave, and then I look behind me though, and Lauren bloody Roberts from Muriwai, who in my family know her parents, she's on a little wave, and her little wave is catching up to me, and I was like, oh, this little bitch can run real fast. And sure enough, we get off our skis at the same time, and she just sprints up the beach. She gets third, and I get fourth.
Oh.
But it didn't matter. No one cared.
No.
It was like
that
this
moment.
great yarn. I didn't even get a medal, but it didn't matter
Yeah.
because I think it was just for everyone that moment where I stood up and actually stopped and was like, oh shit, okay. And so that's another hilarious yarn where sometimes it doesn't matter if you haven't won the race because if you've got the memory.
Yeah.
I don't think we'd be talking about this if you'd won the race.
No, it'd
Nah.
be boring,
You
wouldn't
know?
it?
Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Are you trying to read his notes?
You see
No,
what's coming
yeah,
next?
what's next? Well, yeah. So, but that was a really long story for a story about someone getting fourth.
Yeah.
It's a good story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we got rewards there. I think that was a good one. Okay, this one is tell us about the time you were on the beach with Richie McCaw.
Oh yeah, great. So I spent a few summers up in Gizzy,
Yeah.
and
R&V. You're a big R&V fan.
R&V. And so I would go up after uni would finish for the uni holidays, and I'd spend the summer there training, and then you'd do the first few weeks of beach education. So the schools would come down, and school would finish, and then you'd do the season of lifeguarding. And so this is quite a few years ago. I reckon this is like I would have been about 18, so that's a good 17 odd years ago. And so I was at Wainui Beach, and I think Richie, so that's 17 years. So I'm not sure if he was the All Black captain at that point. No, he wouldn't have been. He was probably playing. No, he definitely would have been playing for the All Blacks.
Yeah.
But he was really young, and so we heard that he was down the beach, and we were like, me and my mate Kendall, we were like, oh my god,
Gotta go.
oh my god, and so we jumped on the motorbike because it was Wainui Beach. You had to do that anyway. We're like, well, we'll just go and check down the way anyway, and so we saw him, and he was with a couple of his mates, and they were coincidentally throwing around a football, and as we sort of like slowed down, the bike just went
Oh,
Ba-
no.
ba- ba. And we were just like, oh my god. Okay. G'day there. Don't suppose any of you know how to fix a bike? And so, so away he goes and
Course he
starts
did.
helping to fix the bike. At this point though, I've got my digital camera.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I'm just like taking photos of him as he's fixing the bike. It's like, and then
Discreetly?
No.
Or? Okay.
no, in my lifeguard uniform, you know. Yeah. And then we got one of his mates to take a photo with him, myself, and Kendall. And then it made it in the Gisborne Herald as well. Yeah, it was a big moment. So very special occasion. That's not the best Brodie Kane Richie McCaw story.
Oh,
Go
by
on.
any stretch of the imagination.
Oh, let's
Yeah.
go.
But I feel sorry for him. So you know how he's like a helicopter pilot, right?
Mm.
And a Westpac, I'm pretty sure he's still a Westpac like ambassador or whatever. And so a few years ago I was working on 7 Sharp, and I was based in Christchurch, and they were doing a big Westpac rescue helicopter fundraiser. And so I was to go with Richie, and at this time he was the All Black captain, and he was the hottest man in New Zealand, and everyone was like, ah.
Was he back then as well, on the Gisborne Beach?
Gisborne Beach, he was a snack. God, I don't know if you're allowed to say that. And
think I
then
can.
he was the man
The
of
whole
New
meal.
Zealand. He was the he was the degustation at this time. God, yeah. And but everyone was in love with him. Like every woman was in love with him. Every man wanted to be him. At this time, it was peak Richie, and so I had to go. And I was in Christchurch with him, and then Michael Holland, who was a 7 Sharp reporter on Auckland, was with Sir John Kerwin. And we had to like mirror these kind of rescue challenges. And so we chop it away, and he of course naturally flew the plane, flew the chopper. It was like,
All
and
right,
he was in
Richie.
like this red,
We get it, bro.
all right, and like in a jumpsuity thing, and you're just like, crikey. And so then we had to do like a series of like survival things, and then the Westpac rescue helicopter guy looked at me and was like, right, and he winked, because we had to learn to make use a boil bloody hot, make a drink on the thing. Listen to me, you'd think I'd know from the army. I've had 3 sips of beer too. Like various survival tasks on the top of this mountain, which was very cold. And then the Westpac rescue helicopter guy winked at me and was like, right, so and the cameras are rolling and stuff. He's like, right, so we're going to treat Brodie for hypothermia. And I was just like,
Genius.
good from you.
Genius play.
And so basically, obviously it didn't. obviously, legitimately, if someone has hypothermia, you're supposed to be very close, and actually skin on skin is
important.
Yeah.
Yep.
Obviously, for the purpose of this exercise, that's not what happened, but I did dive into the sleeping bag and then on national television looked up at the All Black captain and said, "What do you want to be, big spoon or little spoon?" And then he just put his head in his hands as if to think, "Oh my God." And then he jumped in. He jumped in because there was survival techniques.
Yeah.
And,
Did you go truck and trailer or?
He was big spoon. And so then when I got back to the office, everyone was like, "That's the shot, that's the shot." And it really was. And that's my story.
Did he remember you from?
Yeah.
Oh, God, do you know what? I've seen him that many times over work, and obviously now like things like the Coast to Coast, that sometimes I think he looks and goes, "Oh, shit. Oh, g'day, Brodie. What's she going to throw at me today?" But I haven't thrown any of those kind of curveballs. I'm very like, "G'day, mate, how are you? See you on the bike or see you up the mountain." Very much more chilled now.
Yeah.
But I still do think he just, every now and then is like, "Ooh, there she is, crikey."
It's good. It's good. It's strong stories.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Strong stories.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the army now.
Oh, yeah.
So 7th form.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was just thinking about you not knowing about the boiling and the
I know
fire starting.
that's why I was
Yeah.
terrible. Because I was kind of we literally made a cup of tea, but I was getting confused and saying, "Do we have a boil in the bag?" No, we didn't have a boil in the bag. So yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Very confused.
Let me just say, I love guests that have so many different layers to their personality. You know, like
They get
people
older
might,
and they get confused.
people might know you as Brodie Kane the dancer, or they might know you on the radio or the TV. They might have learned about your clubbies and army as well. Like, there's just so many different parts of your personality.
Yeah.
It's cool. So 7th form, army recruiter comes to your school,
Yeah.
captures your imagination.
Yeah. I just was sort of like, that would be fun. Like, just to go away for a week in the army. I thought that I just wanted to see how much it was like the movies.
Mm.
So I was like, "Oh, I'm at a loose end these school holidays."
Had you watched G.I. Jane?
I think I probably had. You know, and
I know that gets a bad rap now after the Chris Rock, Will Smith thing.
Yeah.
But,
well,
Oh,
Has
yeah.
the movie received?
well, it's sort of tarnished. It's all sort of it's all blurred in that sort of.
yeah, but I feel like, no, I probably would have watched that. I would have watched a few of the other ones like Top Gun and Hot Shots and all that.
It's
kind
very different experiences.
Hot Shots is fantastic. I stand by that.
That's a
But-
great film, but if your army experience was like that, then you.
No, it wasn't. And it absolutely. Well, there's probably a couple of parallels, maybe, but it was. I just thought, oh, that'll be fun. Let's go and see what happens. And there were elements of it that you were like, yeah, this is like the movies, like just yelling at you and
Is it really like that?
yeah, running through the snow and oh my God and hurry up and
Hurry up, Kane.
Yeah, like, and so it was quite wild. And so that was at Burnham down in Christchurch. And it was freezing. It had snowed at the start of the week, and then the temperature did not rise for the snow to melt that whole week. So it was absolutely freezing. And at the end of it, obviously they were recruiting. So at the end they were like talking to everyone about, hey, well, what would you like to do? And they came up to me though and were like, we would love you to like pursue being an officer. And I was like, oh, that sounds pretty cool.
Bit of me, eh?
And then they sort of rolled out these options like that, you know, because they knew that I wanted to go to university. So there's a few like different kind of schemes that they offered that they were like, you could consider this. And one of them obviously was like, that would pay for your university.
They pay for you, right?
Yeah, pay for your university. And you, for every year you're there, you give a year's service back. So I was like, that sounds like cool. So I finished that week, jumped in the car, was like, Mum, Dad, I think I'm going to join the army. And they were like, oh, jeez.
Yeah, is that the worst like thing a kid? And so, no disrespect to the troops.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
support the troops and all that. But if your son or daughter comes home saying they want to join the army,
Yeah.
you've got to be thinking.
Well, they were just like,
Oh, boy.
oh gosh, when are we gonna? When are you gonna do that? I was like, this year. When? Just before end of school and before uni starts. Like, oh, okay. And then the next part of the process was going away to Trentham, north of Wellington, and that was, I believe, that was called the Officer Selection Board. And so you were away for like 5 days, and there was quite a lot of people, and it was like a mixture of really intense mental and physical challenges and like psychometric tests and seeing how well you worked in a team and how well you led and all of that kind of stuff. And then at the end of that, it was almost like you, on the last day, you literally walk down a hallway, kind of like, I guess, Survivor styles, and there's these three big dudes in their army uniforms that are like, congratulations, you've made it into the New Zealand Army. Or obviously not everyone got that, but I got that, and then it was like, okay. And so then it was like, shit, I'm going away to Waiodu, and went up there on the 3rd of January. So instead of like having your sort of last year before uni and chilling, it was like, right, let's go to Waiodu for the summer, and that's what I did. So it was amazing.
When you look back now, is that something you're really glad you did? Is it something you're really proud of?
Yeah, it was quite an amazing experience, and I think I was 17 at the time, and I think people were sort of like, oh gosh, like, that's so mature of you, or that's so, like, the fact that you want to do that and do uni, and people were sort of like, wow. But it just sort of happened. Like, it all just sort of it's not like it happened by accident, but it sort of kept going. And then it was like, this is an amazing experience. It was so hard. Like, it was so hard that you were in basic training for 7 weeks, and like, half the time you had no idea what you were doing, so you were learning to have an idea of what you were doing. But it was just like, again, it was like an extreme pressure cooker situation. Up at 5, quick shower, iron your shit, polish your boots, march to breakfast, and then the day was ahead, and whatever it was going to be, whether it was in a classroom trying not to fall asleep, learning the art of navigating, but you've only had 4 hours sleep, so everyone was just like, oh God. Or out on the range, learning to use a rifle or a machine gun, to being out in the field and digging your own shitter, you did everything in that 7 weeks. So it was really, really challenging. And then I didn't end up doing the university scheme. I didn't get good enough grades out of 7th form. Like, I passed 7th form, but I think you needed an A bursary or something. I didn't get that. And so I ended up just still loving it enough to be like, well, I'll slot into the 2 Cant battalion in Christchurch and just go along and be a weekend warrior.
At any point of the training that you're in there, are you getting racked up to maybe go to combat?
Well, it was interesting actually, because there was a particular period of time where there were a lot of New Zealand troops away. Like, there was a conflict in East Timor. We had troops in the Solomon Islands. We also had troops in Iraq and Afghanistan.
That's where my mum's from. Solomon Islands.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that was, very busy time, and we had huge involvement there. So at that point, there was like, literally there was hardly anyone home. No soldiers home to then replace the soldiers that were already over there. And so there would have, like, I didn't, but I could have gone on a deployment if I had been able to do that, but because I was at university, I wasn't able to do it. But I did go to Brunei in my first year in the army. I went away in the uni holidays and went on a jungle exercise in the Brunei jungle, which was wild.
It's the armed forces is quite interesting, because I'm trying to think now of how you actually prepare mentally for potential conflict. Like, can they replicate that through your training?
Well, you do. Yeah, you do. So you, when they set up exercises with, like, whether it's here, like a lot of them are over on the West Coast, or I'm just thinking of where we went in the South Island, like Tekapo.
Beautiful place for a conflict.
Really warm. Beautiful. You think about all of the army places, like Waiodu, it's like, oh my gosh, like always just like mildly hell on earth, kind of either freezing or stinking hot. But you do actually, the way that the exercises are structured is like, right, this, before, for instance, before we went to Brunei, you're given your briefing, like, this is what we're going to do, which is, fight a war. So we took our own enemy party. So like 10 other people came that we fought every day. And so you'd fight, you'd be like cruising along, and then bang, they'd strike you. And then you'd fight them until you killed them. And then if they died, you'd carry their bodies. And
I guess to put a modern lens on it, like, your situation is what's happening in Ukraine.
Yeah.
right? Like, there's people that have been in the military that are now legit fighting a fucking war.
Yeah, and
Crazy.
and I feel like as well. I mean, we have so many. We have a really, really good reputation of having really good soldiers, in the New Zealand Army, and like people go, oh, "Would you?" And I was like, "Well, of course I would, if I had to go and defend the country. Yeah, I think I would. Yeah,
Step up.
But yeah, it was an amazing experience, and it taught me like lots about self-discipline, lots about time management, and just sorting your shit out.
I thought that when you were saying those early mornings, because we're going to get into the breakfast radio and the breakfast TV. 5 o'clock at the army is nothing compared to some of those hours you're doing. So that structure, that platform of discipline, feels like it's a pretty good thing to have in those later teenage years, right? Like, it's really got to set you up well.
Yeah, and it was like, it really did, and I'm very grateful for it. And I feel like it definitely, the more that you've got your shit squared away, the easier and the better your life will be. And that was really drilled into me then. So even just like getting up, the first thing you do is make your bed. Done.
Nobody did that until that Navy Admiral did it, and then someone put it on YouTube.
Oh, and then it was, that's a
And
great
it was like,
idea.
fuck,
Yeah,
actually, yeah. I'll do that.
Yeah. So, so there's a lot of things that, time management, and being on time, and that's a real, I like to be on time everywhere.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I do too. And you were early today.
Yeah.
So it's nice.
I'm getting used to.
Why were you both looking at me like I was always late?
No.
No, mate. That's
I'm-
in your head.
I'm
Okay?
still getting used to living in Auckland though, and you can't just nip across town. You have to leave with heaps of time.
Yeah.
So I have been late a couple of times to things, and I'm like, ugh, but I'm getting used to it.
Do you say things like, I'll meet you at 0600 still?
No,
Or-
but my phone is on 24 hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
I operate a
How far
24
away is it? Oh, it's a couple of clicks.
Yeah,
A couple of clicks
I
north.
think I've said clicks before. Yeah. but nothing too army themed. But there's, it was fascinating. I had a wonderful experience where I met Willie Apiata
Wow.
VC last year, which was probably like one of the highlights, like for me, meeting someone like that. And I was emceeing something that he was involved with for Westpac at Field Days, and it was just incredible. But you're in that kind of situation where you're like, I'm here with the current VC, just this incredible war hero. How do I kind of link it so that you're also in the army, but you don't make it about you, but you want to share some stories.
Yeah.
But the coolest thing that happened there is I said, because he was talking about, he remembered his first, always remember your first day. And I said, I remember my first day, and I said, we got out of the bus and like, form up. And you're like, what is that? What? Form up? What? Oh shit, everyone's running and panicking, and and then it was like, okay, I think we'll sort of stand here, and a couple of the boys get reamed because they've got like beards, and like, what did you expect when you came here, you tosser, and then I always remember the first thing that the sergeant major, and I must say was textbook movie, like the tall, angry sergeant major, and he said, stand up tall like a lamppost. A dog should be proud to piss on you. And Willie was like, bro, the cuz said that to me as well.
Amazing.
I was like, it's one of those things that every single time they get off the bus, that's going to be the first one.
Yeah.
Is it can you tell someone that's been in the forces, or you know what I mean? Like, do you
be marching down Queen Street.
Well, I don't know.
G'day, mate.
Just it's the way they carry
I don't know.
themselves.
Yeah, just the way they carry. Or like, do you have to be like, I also served. Like, is that a thing?
I've not had a situation like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, but always go down to the Razza.
I was going to say, when you go to the RSA, do you like
love having the chats?
Yeah.
At the Razza on Anzac Day.
Is there like a card or anything?
A special
Car
card.
park.
Yeah, I don't know. Just to say that you were in the forces, or is it just
you might have your medals on Anzac Day.
Right.
I'm actually sure you probably could join the
thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably.
Clearly, I'm not a armed services.
I mean, I've never
person.
inquired about a card or anything, but I'll just wear my little service medal and
Right.
see how
So
that
you get
gets
one
me.
of those.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
See, I
yeah.
didn't know that.
Mm.
Right. Good.
Nice. So as you were doing the army stuff, you were also studying to be a journalist. Popped your head out at MediaWorks Radio Live, right?
Yes.
So was that always, I mean, you sort of dabbled with the army, but was it always journalism that you thought was going to be your career?
Yeah, and I think like definitely by 7th form, I was like, I want to be a journalist. And so the army sort of was always going to coincide with that. And, you know, and when I was at uni, like I was at uni for 4 years, I did a Bachelor of Arts and then postgrad journalism. And so during that time as well, you know, all the good advice to me was anywhere you can get your foot in the door so that when you've graduated, you've actually already done some work. So I was like writing the bloody prem grade netball and rungy order for the Northern Outlook for a couple of years, and then, you know, cooking sizzlers for the Breeze outside Harvey Norman every weekend and doing all those things so that you just, we're literally getting a foot in the door. And then that led to some shifts at Radio Live in Christchurch when the reporter there was away, and that's sort of how that happens. And then finished uni and moved straight up here to Auckland, and first job was at Radio Live. And yeah, it was great because Radio Live at the time was a very small newsroom, and so not a great deal of staff, which meant you got to do absolutely everything. So it was like right in. I think my first day on the job, I went to the Auckland High Court for the start of the depositions hearing for the Kahui twins murder trial, and that was like my first day, and they would just get sent down with a couple of bits of paper and away you go. And it was like,
Whose decision making is that? Have you gone with someone?
No.
First day
yeah,
to that trial.
Yeah.
That seems pretty deep
yeah.
end
Well,
stuff.
hey, I'd done my court reporting with Ursula, my lecturer at university. So
Yeah.
I was like, okay, that's cool. I mean, you were able to ring your editor and they would sub your like voice reports and stuff, but yeah, it was pretty full on.
Yeah, right.
That's quite heavy subject matter, like early doors. And
Yeah.
I through the research, I kind of charted. You've done some quite heavy stuff through your career, right? Like, I read the open letter to Grace Mullane's parents
Yeah.
after her murder. You spent White Pride Day in
I did.
Christchurch
Yeah, I
with
did.
like some dudes there,
Really desirable chaps.
and
Not.
wrote about like white privilege in the
Mm.
wake of the mosque shootings and stuff. Like, quite heavy stuff amongst like the light stuff that you've done as well. Like, there's a real light and dark balance to your body of work.
Yeah, and I think definitely in the early days it was like I wanted to be like a hard news journalist, and most of what I did in the early years was, and so I covered the Kahui twins trial, Nia Glassy murder trial in Rotorua, so I was down there for the whole 4 weeks of that. The Anthony Dixon retrial, I went down to Napier when Jan Molinar killed one police officer and shot 2 others and had the big siege down there. So yeah, like some pretty big stuff, as I say, because you were in this newsroom like that. And so, but it's weird, like crime, justice and all of that, I'm interested in it. And when I say that, that sounds slightly weird, but like going and following a court process fascinates me. So I was always like, I always did put my hand up for a trial or something that was crime, because, you know, it's so not something that you can relate to, but something's happened and you want to be part of why, or figure out why. So I've always found that side of things fascinating, and I think that what then happened in my career much later in the piece was I sort of morphed away from the serious stuff, which I struggled with, I guess, because, you know, like when, for instance, when we started on 7 Sharp, everyone took the piss out of it because all the straight up and down journos and everyone that has an opinion was like, what is this? You shouldn't be injecting your personality into stuff. And it was actually kind of the turning of how we consume a variety of how our news is presented to us. And so actually being part of that happening made me realise that actually it's a tricky thing, because ultimately can you be both? I don't know, it depends who you ask. But for me, of late, and I guess, when I wrote about Grace Mullane, or, being someone that had, really woken up to my own white privilege when the mosque attack happened in Christchurch, when I was living there, and got quite involved in a number of things within the community. And, after that happened, you feel like, well, I hate the word platform, but you have a space. You have a space. And so sometimes you feel like it's your responsibility to act with that. And so that's where that sort of goes. It's quite similar probably to now, in the time where, as a woman, it's absolutely time to speak for our fellow wahine over in the US with what's happening with Roe versus Wade, and become an ally. Well, not just become, but be an ally in terms of a very uncomfortable conversation around abortion. And that's another one. So you go, what am I fighting, and when am I doing that? And so it's about, I guess picking your battles and where they sit.
Did I see a picture of you this week at protesting the protesters?
Oh, so that was a picture of me down outside Christchurch Hospital a couple of years ago, when it was, I had it must have been about 4 years ago, and I was going for a run around Hagley Park, and there's a few anti-abortion protesters, mainly men, which is neat, and kind of weird, and and obviously quite religious. Good for you. That's your choice. That's fine. But the minute that you're, and I was running, and I had a great run, and then I saw these guys standing there with these horrific signs right outside the hospital. I was like, nah. And luckily I had one more loop to do to really stew on it. And I was like, this is so shit. A hospital is a place where people are sick and vulnerable, and you're standing out here making people feel really uncomfortable, particularly women who are going in for an abortion. And so I'd run around the loop, and then it was kind of still like, Instagram was definitely a thing. And I was like, well, no, it was a thing, but I was like, I'm going to run past, and I'm going to yell out something, and I'm going to film it, and I'm going to post it. I was like, I'm going to do it. I rang Mum, I was like, I'm going to do this. She's like, well, I was like, I think I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And so I just ran past them, and I kept running, though. I was running across the traffic lights, and I was just, I think I said, my body, my choice. My womb has nothing to do with you. And there's a few people that were like, hey. So they posted that on Instagram, and quite possibly that was the most response I had to anything, and probably still to this day, thousands of messages. A very small few chose that road, that's cool, and it's like, well, you don't have to follow me, go away. But thousands of messages. And so you go, if that's made a difference in a handful of people's day, if a woman who's had an abortion feels a little bit better because I've yelled at the dickheads outside the hospital, then that's actually a job that I will take on. And then COVID happened, and I was ready to go down there with my sign for ages, and then all the COVID stuff happened. And so then, sure enough, after everyone was allowed back out they were with their signs. And so I was like, right, okay.
We go again.
Oh, we're going. And so I went down there with my big sign, which was designed to stand next to them, which said, ignore these Muppets.
Yeah.
Bright pink. And just stood there, and they tried to talk to me. And I was like, I'm not here to engage with you. It says ignore you. And that's what I'm telling people. I'm not here to discuss what you think. And they'd try, and it was like, no. And so then I went back the week after, and I put something else on the other side. And then, other girls and other people would come along, and I think they still have quite a good showing of people that go and stand next to them. Thankfully, they're not allowed. There's a safe zone now, but apparently they're still they're across the road at Hagley Park, and it's like, go and get a hobby. I don't stand outside church and say Jesus isn't real because that's what I think. So just stop pesting. Get out. Not helping anyone. Anyway, yeah.
I think that's why you're so relatable and successful, is that people that you do the things that they kind of wish they would do themselves, but for whatever reason don't. Like my wife Bonnie is a big fan of yours, and she's like, when I told her you're coming on the podcast, she's like, she's awesome. She's so just relatable. She's just the things you do and say and come up with, and the platform you use is really cool.
Space.
Space.
Oh, yeah, space.
Yeah.
It was
So
great.
I just wanted to say that, but just linking back to you mentioned 7 Sharp. I'm kind of keen to trace your journey. So a couple of years at Radio Live, and then you went to News Talk ZB, and then you went overseas,
Yeah.
and then you came back to Q&A,
That's right.
and then to 7 Sharp,
Yeah.
right? So that 7 Sharp thing, like that was a big deal when 7 Sharp was started. Like you say, it was taken over from Hard News. It was taking that primetime spot. What was your brief? Like, what was your job that they actually signed you up for?
My job was Christchurch reporter / producer, and at that particular time, I was going to be the only one in Christchurch. Actually, the South Island. I was the only one in the South Island for the show, and it was my first on-air gig. So it was my first. I'd news reported on radio, and then I had a bit of producing experience, and then obviously produced Q&A. But I was down there on my own, trying to figure things out. And the first few months of the show was so hectic and just carnage that I feel like it was very hard to sort of figure out what we were, everyone was just sort of trying to figure out what we were doing. So it was really, really hard. And then, of course, as well, everyone had an opinion on it. And, that was when that was back in the day when I was still on Twitter. And that's where everyone loves to have an opinion, don't they? Oh, my word.
Yeah. So your job was to, each day you had to create a little story, a little bit? Was it one a day sort of thing?
No, because it was a bit tricky. Then it was... sometimes you couldn't even get hold of anyone to get a story approved to go out and film. It was that busy. It was that full on for them trying to figure out what the show was. But by and large, would just go and find a cool story, film it, wait for it to get approved, and then it would go on air. So I mean, and as time went by, that sort of the situation got better, and there was a bit more of a routine and that kind of thing, and so I ended up being incredibly busy because there was always things happening down in Christchurch or the surrounds, and it was just about finding cool people and telling cool stories, and we got to do that, and I am so grateful and met some wonderful people.
It was a roller coaster of criticism and opinion in those early days. How much of it did you read? Were you paying attention?
No, all of it, because that was that was my first tally gig. So that was 2013, and so I was quick maths, 27. So you're still relatively in the early stages of that kind of career. So you care about everything. You literally care about everything. Well, I certainly did.
And it's your first time in front of camera as well, right?
Yeah.
Because you'd done the producing on Q&A, the behind-the-scenes stuff, and you stepped forward into the limelight
and it was
in a brand new show.
Yeah, with everyone watching. So I definitely did, and I cared about what everyone thought of it, and I was still grappling with, am I going to go down this road where I am kind of the funny or sometimes doing gags, and you're aware that sometimes people get pigeonholed into that in various spaces, and so but it was hugely beneficial to I guess enhancing your storytelling, because what I think it did and continues to do is because it's not there's absolutely a place for both. There's a place for down the barrel serious news reporting. Here are the facts. He said, she said. But there's also room for come in and meet, Nana, who's got 75 Mercedes-Benz because she's collected them since she was this, and let's go into her house and let's take her around the racetrack. And so I like the space for a story to be told where the reporter is allowed to be involved in it. I think that's come a long way, and I actually think here in New Zealand, 7 Sharp probably did help start that.
It did, as well as the evolution of social media and YouTube and things, right? Because traditionally it was just very hard news, and it was these are the facts. And now there's so many creative influences and platforms on these different social media that it has to sort of merge into TV, right? And that sort of thing. But when... Sorry, I lost my train. So I'm kind of interested in you had about 6 different jobs in about 8 different years.
Yeah.
Like the actual transitions into them. So like, does Fair Go, because you went from 7 Sharp to Fair Go.
Yes.
Does Fair Go come headhunt you? Like, are you doing so well on 7 Sharp that you're getting a bit of profile and then an opportunity comes that someone wants you for their new show?
I think from memory, there was a space of gosh, stop. Now I'm really taking off with the word space. I've used it 3 times in the past 10 minutes.
It's a safe one.
There was I was down in Christchurch 7 Sharp. I'd been there for about 18 months. And then there was a job going at Fair Go, and I was asked to apply.
Did Kevin Milne ask you?
No, he wasn't there. But it was the wonderful Gordon Harcourt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, we're just synonymous.
I know.
It's a Kiwi institution.
Yeah,
But then he went off to Carpet Mill, I think.
He did go off to Carpet Mill. But I got asked to apply, and so I did apply and then got the job and then moved back up to Auckland and worked on Fair Go for 2 years. I loved that. I loved that show, and I loved that show. I loved working on it. It's probably like the work that I'm most proud of.
Yeah, really.
Because you some days you're acting like I'm like, I should be getting paid $1,500 an hour. That's what lawyers and like, you're negotiating on the phone. You're like, mate, this is the last time we're going to talk to you. Like, take it or leave it. And then you're going back to the victim, and you're like, right, this is not victim, but like, this is what we've got for you. I think it's a good deal. And you're like, what? This is wild, But it was, and it's such an institution, and no one ever wanted to be at the end of the phone call when you said,
yeah, did you have any really hairy ones?
Oh, you would just...
Oh, you fuck off, Kane. Like, that sort of stuff.
I didn't have probably didn't have a fuck off, but, we did hightail it after a man in Wellington, a roofer. It was not supposed to be roofing, but was. And we basically had to we had permission to do this as well from our lawyers, like follow him from his house in like the Kapiti Coast area into central Wellington. Well, we thought we were on the Fast and the Furious. It was absolutely outstanding. So there was a couple of those. But the unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but the kind of I guess health and safety has changed kind of what you can do and how far you're able to go. But there was definitely some times where it's like, do not feel like we should be here. But then again, that's some of those kind of stories. But then, you'll have a story against a big company, big corporation, and now, you're satisfied to like nail them down for what they've done. And, but they'd never want to hear the phone. But sometimes, because you wanted to try and be really creative with your stories, you'd be like, well, what, because literally it's not very, you're thinking about pictures and you've got 5 minutes to tell a story. It's like, this woman's got mouldy carpet. I can't sit in her house and show the mouldy carpet for 5 minutes. So what will we do? Well, we'll take her to a sheep farm. Like, I didn't do that, by the way. I'm just trying to think on the fly.
Okay, see what you do.
You're trying to be creative, so you'd like ring Time Zone and be like, g'day, it's Brodie Kane from Fair Go coming. And then, oh no, what? And I'm like, no, I legitimately, we just want to use your go-karts, like, just for a story. Oh, you sure? We haven't done anything? No, just the go-karts. Yeah. Okay, fine. So, yeah, take them, So, but yeah, it was a great job.
So, great job. Proud of your work you did there. Would need a pretty good job to pull you away. So, the transition into breakfast, right?
Yeah.
Is that kind of one of the only jobs that you could have left for, or how did that play out?
Well, it wasn't even it was a job that they created. It was a role that hadn't been done for a while. They'd decided to gas, for want of a better term, the existing presenters and start afresh. And there wasn't a sports presenter, but they wanted to give that a crack. And they were like, we think that we want a sports presenter, but we also want your style, and we want you to go out and do meet the sport people, but also get around schools and that kind of stuff.
Are you thinking dream job at this point?
Well, I was like, oh gosh, I'd never thought. But yes.
Have they got better and better and better? Like the 7 Sharp was cool, Fair Go was great. Now breakfast, like, was it in the words of Brendan McCullum, were you trending upwards?
Well, breakfast was really hard. So I have fond memories of, it was probably when I first really experienced anxiety. I had never presented, like, so you'd done all your reporting, but I'd never presented, I'd never read an auto cue. And I was doing sport, and there probably were a few people amongst the newsroom that were pissed off that I got that job and you knew about it.
Well, they didn't know about your surf lifesaving.
No.
Your clubby days.
Yeah, exactly. And that, I would have, if we needed an exclusive with Lisa, we would have got it. And so I really felt the pressure. The particular role that I took as well had no one for the first couple of months anyway really to help. So like the task of the job was borderline impossible, which was writing the sports bulletin, cutting the pictures, and presenting it. And so when you think about the bulletins every half an hour, but you've got to be in there for each of the openers to be on screen, bit of banter off the back of sport, you had no time. Like I was just trying to write at least have 2 bulletins written before 6 a.m. So for the top of the hour and the half, and try and like piece them together. And then if there was an intern or someone or a junior producer that was doing news, I'd have to ask every morning, like, is there anyone that can write the cricket, or is there anyone, anyone that can just keep an eye on this football game? So it was actually, and then there was of course the mornings where I was out in the field. So it was actually a really hard job, and there were times where I was like, well, I've absolutely been set up to fail. And I did get a bit of like, I guess we'll call it constructive criticism, but I actually said, I was like, I'm sorry, I like to think that I'm amazing. I cannot do this in the current format. I cannot do this on my own. You're like, you're wanting my presenting skills to get better. They cannot, because I do not have time at any stage. Like I'm writing a bulletin and then running in to present it. I don't have time to think, about whatever else they're going to throw to me. So it was actually really stressful.
Did they listen?
Yeah, we did get, yep, we got actually one of the first very, very cool people that I worked with, Michelle, who's still a sports reporter at 6 o'clock, One News, and Michelle Prendeville. So she came on, and we were just this little team, and even then probably still wasn't enough, but we were this great little team, and that felt a lot better. And then I did just come into my own actually, and that after those first sort of 2 or 3 months of like feeling really, really stressed about it every morning, and the hours.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
And then Michelle came along, got my groove on, and then sort of like felt that I could sort of, make the role my own. And so then I loved it. I loved being out in the field. I loved getting around the country, and meeting good old salt of the earth Kiwis, but getting down to bloody Pukekohe and going and seeing all the V8 drivers, and taking Sonny Bill Williams through the McDonald's drive-through live, and just Joseph Parker carpool karaoke.
Your profile was growing all through these periods, but obviously that breakfast gig, being on TV every morning, that huge audience, did you notice a big swelling of comments and DMs and social media stuff over that period?
Not so much at that period. I feel like that was kind of when that level of social media was still quite, like, most people were still kind of on Facebook. Instagram was sort of kicking off. So not that much, but that was when I noticed how horrible people can be about TV shows and TV presenters, and if you're on one of those, you are fair game. And so that was when I experienced the most intense of the nasty comments and stuff like that on breakfast, for sure.
How are you experiencing them? Through the comments?
Through the comments, yeah. Like, so on the, on the breakfast page, if they posted a video of you or something, or emails that would come in.
You just couldn't help yourself to read. Like, you knew not to read them, but you had to see what they were saying.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that, yeah. The one that will forever be etched in my memory, because when you actually think about it, this person's really thought long and hard about this one.
I know where you're going.
And this was, she looks like Christian Cullen with a wig and lippy. I mean, that person, let's call them John, has really sat down and been like, I can't quite put my finger on.
Right, Brodie's going to get it today.
Yeah.
Let's go into the tank for a minute here and see
and
what we can come up with.
And it's funny because, we often say that 99 people might give you a compliment in a day and one person says something shitty, and why do we always worry about that one? And so that was a very, very good learning curve, like breakfast, and to, to a degree 7 Sharp with the criticism and stuff. And it took time and a process to then be able to shut that kind of stuff out. Because again, still at that point, I'm like, I do care, I do sort of, I think I do care what people think, and I want to do a good job, but that noise is completely irrelevant. The nasty noise is not what you need to be worried about. It's the constructive criticism from your peers. It's the, how can I be better at this job? Not, you look like a piece of shit on television. That doesn't matter. Completely irrelevant.
Do you talk with your peers? Do they help you through that process? Have people been through that before, or do you have to learn that as you go along?
I think shared experiences are really important in terms of like talking to people that probably have been through that and how they've sort of dealt with it. And I guess as well, the amount of times you talk to people about it, you realise that unfortunately it happens to everyone. It doesn't matter how, like, look at how beautiful Wendy Petrie looks on the news and her amazing power suits that she wears. There'll still be someone saying something stupid about her. Yeah. So you go and let's go up higher. Someone will be criticising Beyonce for her song right now. So no one is immune. And so it's a sad part of our society that we all think that we should jump on our keyboards and say what we think about people. Fortunately, it's just a reality. So I'm grateful that I've learnt how to shut it out, but I will always pick the battles to highlight that this is not acceptable behaviour, to try and like help our young people with online bullying and stuff like that.
It's a theme too. We've had Laura McGoldrick on here talk about like calling people out and actually going after people. We had we've had Hayley Sproul on here talking about the same thing. I've heard you retell a story of calling someone out as well around a comment that they made on TVNZ website.
It was
Facebook.
Yeah, it was Facebook breakfast. It was this one guy who just would comment almost every day on a video, tag his mates, and every now and then they'd all chime in. And look, for a while there I was like, maybe I do look like a man, because they had this real theme that I look like a man. Botox and that, it's probably sorted that out since. But I just was like, actually, this is borderline obsessive. Like, every day you're coming onto the breakfast page to say something shit about me. So, and I had actually talked to Laura McGoldrick about her calling out a particular human, and I just was so amazed that she'd done that as well. And so I was like, nah, right, okay. And so I clicked on this guy's profile page, Facebook, and it's, a guy that's looks like he's, late teens or early 20s. And of course his workplace is on there, and I'm like, right, let's go.
Let's go.
And so I click on the workplace, and there's a Facebook thing, and there's a number, but I thought, I'm gonna go ham. I'm gonna go all in. And so I wrote on the wall, hi there, my name's Brodie Kane. I'd just like to make some inquiries about your company's online bullying policy. I am the target of one of your employees currently. At the same time, I ring the number. Literally as I'm ringing the number, the post disappears off the page. I ring the number and get a man on the phone and explain who I am and explain what had happened, and that this particular employee had been abusing me at my place of work online. Because let's not forget, that's still what it is, People often think that that's somehow different. Calling someone an asshole online is different to, well, they wouldn't do it to someone's face. And so I was chatting to this chap and explaining everything, and he was an older guy, and he sort of was like, I guess playing it coy, probably because he was like, oh shit. But he was like, look, I'll have to check in on this. I'm not familiar with who you are and that kind of thing. And I was like, well, that's cool. I'd just be keen for some sort of response, and maybe if we get an assurance that this guy won't do this again. Probably throw in the lawyers thing too, because that gives people the shits. And so then about half an hour later, he rings back, and he's like, hi Brodie, it's so and so ringing. We spoke before. I'm sorry that I've taken so long to get back to you. I'm actually just in utter shock. I know exactly who you are. In fact, my wife and I watch breakfast most mornings. Think you're great. And that person that has been doing that is my son. And he's like, and he works for me, but he's studying at Otago. I just never knew this side to him. And he was gutted, and I was gutted for him. And so we had a great chat, and then he was like, I hope you don't mind, but he's going to be ringing you to apologise. And I was like, yep, you know. And so that night, he rung, this chap rung, and, you know, he was pretty like, you know, you could definitely tell he had his tail between his legs. But I just said to him, do you know, and this is one of my big lessons that I carry with me now. I said, mate, you don't have to like me. I actually don't care. And I actually don't care what you think I look like. Good for you that that's what you think. But the minute that you think that it's okay to put that on a Facebook page or say that out loud, then we've got an issue. And I said, I've looked on your Facebook page. You've got what looks like a really nice looking girlfriend. She looks lovely. Imagine if she had come home and some prick had behaved how you've behaved towards me. And so it's when people realise that there's actually humans behind all of this, then it's like, oh shit, sorry, you know? But going back to that, not you don't have to like me, that's another really big lesson in terms of working in an environment where everyone does have an opinion or your job is relatively public, is that not everyone is going to like you. And that's actually okay. And the minute you can sit with that, it takes a lot of weight off your shoulders, because not everyone will like you. I get annoyed by myself some days, so imagine what other people are like. So learning to balance out and go, that noise of people being horrific actually does not matter. You pick your nearest and dearest that you want your feedback, honest, constructive criticism, and that's what matters. The rest of it doesn't. It actually doesn't. But it's also okay for not the whole world to like you. For people to be incensed by you.
And great lessons, but lessons you can only learn through experience, right? You only know this because of the career you've lived and having these things happen to you. Yeah.
I mean, I wish that there was like a bit of a memo, like maybe a TED talk for every kid that comes out of uni. And you know, and that's why, like, on our podcast, The Girls Uninterrupted, we talk a lot about, gosh, if we could all just tell you, just have a zero fucks pile and fill it up on the daily.
You should do it.
You know?
You should do a TED talk on that.
Well, yes, actually. Oh, gosh, you're right.
That is a great
Brodie Kane
idea.
Media.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Because I feel like if we all realised, I don't know whether it's different for the Gen Zers now, but social media probably complicates that even more. But if you just realise that as long as you're attempting, as long as you're a good person and you're trying every day to be a good person, not a shit human, and you know you're trying to do your bit with recycling, and you're not being racist, and you're trying to just be a good part of society, that's good. But also, not everyone's going to like you, and that's still okay. Even if you are being a good person, you're still going to annoy people. It's fine.
Is there anything at like TVNZ, like any manual to help prepare you for that, or are you just kind of like chucked in and fucking here you go? Or like a support network to help deal with that sort of stuff outside of like HR?
There's
She thinks, what am I going to say? Am I going to go in? Nah.
Yeah.
It's not really an HR thing.
No,
but,
it's certainly not an HR thing.
You know, pastoral care is a better way of putting it.
Certainly not when I was there. I'm not sure if it's changed. I'm not sure whether there's any of the, you know, with the blow up of social media. I'm not sure if there is anything. I mean, there was always things like if you were working on hard stories and things like that. Counselling is something that was always available. Actually, you know, at places like NZME when I worked there as well, like after the mosque attack and stuff like that. So there are definitely support mechanisms in there. But I think even in those, like when I was working there, that was all when social media was really sort of kicking off, and everyone went, oh, I've got an opinion on this, and I can now use my voice with my keyboard. So it's definitely evolved.
Niche area for you to exploit now, maybe.
Yeah.
Speaking from experience to new journalists coming through.
Yeah, actually probably a good idea.
You're welcome.
Shay said Brodie Kane Media, and I'm excited to get there because it's a part I've really been looking forward to talking about. But I just want to connect the dots. So left breakfast to go to the radio show and the hits.
Yeah.
Right? Again, big decision. Big
Yeah.
job. Big job you're leaving. Big job you're moving to. Back to Christchurch. Was it easy?
Well, it was a sort of a bit of a drawn out decision because I was definitely enjoying living in Auckland. I felt very settled. But when I was sort of negotiating and figuring it out, it was like, well, I do love radio, and radio some of the time, not for me at that time, but I didn't know that then. Radio has longevity. So you look at it and go, if I end up being good at this, you really can. You look up to your people like Simon Barnett, and you're like, gosh, you can be on radio forever. And people really enjoy it, and it's a great form of media. And so it was like, actually, it's not like it was. I guess it was probably a side step. Maybe people might have viewed it as a step back, but I saw it as a challenge, and I was like, I'm gonna go down there. The station, the hits in Christchurch was not doing that well, and the challenge was, let's try and get a radio show, and try and grow some listeners. And so it was like, well, that's quite a big challenge, and it was like, yeah, and let's go home, and that's where family is and stuff like that. So did that, and really was like, okay, this is probably, we're gonna have to give this a good nudge for a few years. So I bought a house, and Mum and I already owned a place together out at Waikuku Beach, which is about half an hour north of Christchurch. But yeah, was down there earning good money, and was like, yeah, well, I'm gonna buy a house to live in, and did. And then like literally it must have been a day in early February 2020, and Fitzy and I got made redundant. And it was like, and it was so out of the blue. It was so, like, we were like, ha, this is a joke, eh? And no, it wasn't.
This is pre-pandemic, pre-lockdown, right?
Yeah.
So February 2020.
Yeah.
As the back end is about to fall out of the media industry,
Yeah.
but you're first, because NZ Media made the decision to, was it syndicate Jono and Ben? Nothing to do with the performance.
Nothing to do with the performance.
It was just a business decision.
Business decision, you're a cog in a wheel. The sooner you learn that, the sooner you can sleep at night, right?
Does it make it easier?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When actually one of the, it's amazing because when you're made redundant, you realise how many people have been made redundant. So you're part of quite a big club. And I actually think
you don't get a medal for that one,
No,
like
you
you do
don't.
for the armed
You do
services,
not.
unfortunately.
No, you don't. But it was actually Ali Moore, who is a really good friend of mine and has been a mentor of mine back since like the 7 Sharp days. And she was really, really helpful through that whole process. And she said, you cannot take it personally. That will destroy you if you stew over this and think that it's something personal. And so I actually latched onto that quite early, which was really good. But, it absolutely knocks your confidence because it's such a small industry. And so you're like, well, what am I going to do now? And, there weren't any job offers. There weren't for ages. And you think, oh, okay, maybe that's it, kind of. Maybe that is it. And then you have your anger and frustration because you're like, I feel like I should be out there. And I guess as time heals a lot of things, I thought that for a long time, to be successful in the industry, I had to be on radio or television. And that chewed me up. I wasn't disappointed. I hadn't taken it personally, but I was like, I'm just gonna disappear because I have to be on the radio or television for anyone to take me seriously or take note. And then just as, the decision to go, well, actually, our podcast is going well and we've rebranded it and it's blowing up overseas and we've already got skin in the game. Let's actually go out and do that. And yes, it's taking a while to catch on and, people still kind of are like, I'm not quite sure what you do or that kind of thing. But it was the best decision to just give that a crack amidst the angst and the lack of self-confidence and all of that. It was absolutely like so many people I've talked to that have been made redundant are like, it was shit at the time, but it was the best thing that ever happened to them. And I really believe that for myself too.
Okay, cool. We're here, Brodie Kane Media, because 2 years on from then, right?
Yes.
We're 2 years on. Is like, how are things going? Because from the outside, it looks like you're doing exceptionally well. It looks like your podcasts are hitting, your Instagram game, you're doing MC work, you're doing bits and pieces, video projects. Like, is it going that well?
Yeah, I think it's a bit thirsty. I've been talking a lot.
It's your episode.
Yeah. I think that, I mean, in July, which is just around the corner, will be 2 years, and the fact that it's been 2 years in a pandemic as well is not lost on me. But it's pretty. I'm pretty overwhelmed, to be honest, with that. That I haven't not that I haven't that hasn't failed or anything, but that it's just.
Remember to celebrate when things go really well. Remember that?
Exactly right.
Nicely
Bloody
said,
hell.
Shay.
Remember that?
But I mean, like, I'm fascinated that I'm fascinated at how well I've done in a way that's like, yeah, it's been in the middle of a pandemic. There's been big lockdowns where work just dries up or just falls off the cliff, and that I've been able to actually make the decision to come back up here because, you know, when it started, I was like, you know, the first year of the pandemic and figuring that out, I was like, okay, we're just going to pump the brakes on the mortgage, just not a mortgage holiday, but just the old interest only, whatever, and was like, okay, and then I then made the decision to move home and live with mum, and was like, and then put tenants in the house, and so made all these sort of decisions that you make when you're like, I want to try and make a go of this. And so it's amazing to also be able to think, well, I've come up here now, and we're sort of 2 years in. Now, 2 years in, the business the business savvy side of me is not there in terms of like, you know, like if I look at what I'm good at,
Yeah.
that's cool. Part of the reason I've come up here is to go, okay, I have to now think about how this might get bigger, what that might look like, and how I have to get it there. So I don't think I was like, I can't just sit at home at Waikuku Beach and figure that out down there. I need to do that up here. And so that's sort of like the next challenge is going from, okay, cool, you can produce anything, you can set up new podcasts, you can create video content, you can MC, but how can you actually get the business bigger and making more money, I guess, is the way to look at it. So that's sort of where we're at now.
Podcasts like the Storefront, I'm asking as much for us as for anyone listening.
We're doing what you suggested people do, which is ask people how they did it.
Yeah, good. Yeah, and you got to ask for help,
right?
Yes.
So I'm kind of obsessed with the podcast industry. So I started
really
listening to podcasts like 2006, the Ricky Gervais, Carl Pilkington, Steve Merchant podcast. I was like, fuck, podcasts have been around for ages.
Yeah.
Why has it taken so long for New Zealand to catch up? And it's only like, so we've been doing this nearly 3 years. The audience growth in the last year, but more specifically the last 3 months, has just been exponential. Like, it's been a real boom. And it seems like everyone you talk to is listening to a podcast now. And it wasn't the case 2 years ago. It maybe wasn't the case 1 year ago. But are you seeing that same sort of boom with your podcast? And what do you need to make it commercially successful and viable?
Well, I think I would
podcast OG in New Zealand, right?
Yeah. Well, we started, you know, Girls. It was actually Girls on Top, and that was I think it's 4.5 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, and then obviously we made a very smart business decision to be like, well, none of us were at NZB. Actually, Caitlin was still there, but we were like, well, we're not going to have any affiliation anymore. So we rebranded to the Girls Uninterrupted. And so we have done that and grown the audience literally by doing a weekly podcast and chucking it up on social media. So that's where I'm like, if we've done it solely like that, what else can we do, you know? And so I feel like, yes, the podcast boom is here, very much here. And so, but again, we're at that classic point, I feel like, where there's a real saturation. So you have to either stand out or have something that people want to listen to, because it's just such a different experience than listening to the radio or watching the news, or, you know, or whatever, because it's literally, and this is what you're now explaining to brands and advertisers, is no one's more engaged than a podcast listener, because they know that the episode comes out on a Wednesday. It's literally their Thursday morning walk. It's in their ear holes for an hour. Like, that's what they're listening to. Or it's I'm cleaning the house, I'm listening to the Girls Uninterrupted every Friday afternoon. I'm walking around Hagley Park. So you know that it's appointment listening for people. And so that's really, really cool, and that's really, really powerful. And I feel like the space, now who knows what may end up transpiring in terms of, you know, broadcasting standards with podcasts and stuff like that, which I'm, you know, like, for someone like me, I still take pride in the rules and exercising fairness and balance and ethics and law and stuff like that. But yeah, if you've got something that people, you're bringing them in, so you're bringing them in to your community, and so that's why I think they're really cool. And they're longer form. So instead of it being 3 minutes with a musician and between two songs, it's an hour. And you can have these chats, and people might listen to half of it and then be like, right, I'm getting in the car tomorrow and I'll listen to the second half. So it's this whole, like, great experience. And again, it comes back to the real transition of how people access their content. It's on their terms when they want now. And so that's what podcasting is. And then you go, oh, I think the ones that we've always strived to be on are now furiously catching up.
So how much are you thinking as a business owner when you commission new podcasts, right? Because you've got Out the Gayte, 3 Girls at the Beehive, Kiwi Yarns, and Girls Uninterrupted. But like, when you're thinking about growing and expanding it and creating new ones, are you thinking about how big is that too niche? Are you focused on it getting out to as big an audience as possible to bring the money in? Like, what's your thinking?
Not necessarily with new ones. I definitely, what I like to think of is what's not out there. Who's not had an opportunity to talk? Like, who needs a yarn? Who needs a voice? And, if you look at 3 Gals, One Beehive, there's 3 educated chicks having a discussion about politics. Not a bloody dry, stale, pale male in sight offering his analysis. Just 3 chicks. 3 chicks talking about politics. But also being able to have a laugh with it. And it's not too... You can set your rules. So it's like, let's not make a dry balls political show. There's plenty of them. Yeah. Let's have 3 women who can actually have a little bit of a laugh, but give you a bit of juice, bit of tea, and go from there. And then with Out the Gayte, it was like... I feel like I looked at every sort of job that I'd been involved in the media and thought, we have an opportunity to create rules here. So let's have 3 gay men on a podcast talking about whatever they want to talk about through their own gay lens, you know, because we're getting there. Mainstream media is obviously come leaps and bounds in terms of being more inclusive, but there's still, it's still formulaic.
Is it just as important creating the communities around it? Like, I know the Girls Uninterrupted has a huge community. Are you building that with the other podcasts as well? Oh,
well, like the boys on Out the Gayte have already got gators. That's we don't have.
Yeah, we don't have anything, do we?
No.
Beersies or beeries or anything like that. We don't have nothing like that.
The boys got gators like about 4 weeks in.
Oh wow!
It was like incredible. And so it is that kind of special community, and Maddie McLean, who is the weatherman. I think he's not always doing weather. He's actually, one of the main presenters on Breakfast. Gets to come in and talk about stuff that he would never to talk about on breakfast,
Yeah.
but he loves it, you know. But yes, I feel like, you know, the tricky thing is as well is navigating a space where people have had it, where, you know, and New Zealanders get a bit funny when it comes to stuff like this. I think sometimes, like, here's a podcast, and you know you've had it for all this time, and I'm sorry, but there is going to be an ad, and there is going to be an ad, because Dolly Bird's got to pay the mortgage, and you just have to respect that. And but I feel like the cool thing about having the independence of it is that it's still going to be on your terms, and you can pick and choose who you advertise with, who those ads are, and so I quite like that. Is that sort of, as you grow, your audience can still trust that it's you making those decisions, and you just haven't sort of pawned it off and you're going to advertise with someone that's not relevant to the show.
Forecasting, like 5 years into the future, what's the dream? Is it that you're the sort of CEO of Brodie Kane Media, you've got 10 podcasts and you're sort of managing people, or are you still the talent?
Spotify has bought them for $60 million,
Yeah.
and I'm in the Bahamas.
Good dream.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Dream big.
You are the CEO already, though, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm the CEO and the COO and the CFO. Don't do always that well as the CFO. But actually, yes. So, you know, the idea being that there would be a few more, and that it would be an independent network, and also a place where if someone wants a one-off series produced, come to us and do it. I mean, come to me at the moment, it's still just a party for one, but yeah, like definitely want to expand that, and that it is something like that. Look, would I love to still have skin in the game? Yes, but wherever I sit within, I guess, the relevant nature of wherever I am, like, is there which yes there is, like, what does 45-year-old Brodie, what's her place in the broadcasting space, you know? I think you've just got to realise and figure and navigate that out. Like, is the Girls Uninterrupted called Moms Uninterrupted? Do we change the name? Are you morphing? Because you have to evolve. So if the time seems right not to be front and centre, I also love being behind the scenes. Like, I love producing. I think it's probably my favourite thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see. There should be a really successful Joe Bro travel show in the mix somewhere soon. Like, that's got to happen. Yeah. Like Bradley.
That's you and your mum, just for people that aren't familiar with the brand.
You know Bradley Walsh.
Yes.
Who goes around the camper van with his son. That's a big goal of mine, is to make that happen. So that's something that's, you know, hopefully going to happen. And then that'll be so funny that Netflix will
you can film that yourself now, right? You've got the power to do that. Like, that's what Roadie with Brodie?
Brodie's Roadie
was?
Nice.
So yeah, and just enjoying and taking it all in, and knowing at the heart of it, if you make a good product, it will work out. You know, like, I look at where I'm sitting at the moment. As I said, I'm ready to start improving and upskilling the business side of the podcasts. So when you decide to be paid to do something on social media, people have to understand that's your paycheck for the month, and that the 85% of your work right now you're doing for free. You're doing it because you've got a vision, and you think that you're going to be able to pull it off. So, or your MC gig is paying for that month, kind of thing, you know. So I don't think often people are aware of, well, that's you know, why I do, not why I do all of those things, but it really those things really help with all those hours that are not being paid.
It's interesting. People talk to us now as podcast guys who are looking to get into podcast or start a new one, and say, what's the key, what's the secret recipe? And it literally is quality over time. And it's week in, week out. Like, you do it for 3 years, and eventually the followers find you, the listeners find you. And there's no shortcut, there's no secret. Like, you've been doing yours for 5 years. It's 5 years? Girls on Top?
So either 2017, is that 28? What are we in now? 2022?
Yeah.
Maybe 4.5 years.
Yeah, but it's where it is now, only because you've done it for so long, and people will tell a friend, and slowly over time they will find the quality content.
Yeah.
And I said I'd loop back to the dancing. I wondered if the decision to go on Dancing with the Stars was a tactical business move as well, because obviously,
that's smooth, bro. That's a smooth.
Yeah,
that's a
thank you very
smooth
much.
Normally that's me. That's you. That's,
it obviously is great for the profile. Everyone's talking about Brodie Kane. And I said it at the start. I hope you didn't take it as a bad thing. I saw it as a good thing. Brodie Kane Media for the brand. Is that the best thing you possibly could have done?
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, you've been on television for a few years. You've been off it, and then people go, "Oh, there she is again. Great. Wonder what she's up to." And then you had the opportunity to explain that, and I guess find a bit of a new audience, get more people learning about listening to podcasts. And I have had heaps of correspondence from people like, just started listening to your Kiwi yarns and I'm bloody loving it. Thank you. So it was absolutely a great decision to put yourself out there, and that's what you have to do. It's a hard thing, but you put yourself out there. Again, not everyone's going to like you, but you just have to give everything a crack. And if you, life's too short to sort of, oh gosh, don't get cliche. But you do want to give. I've always thought, just give everything a crack. Do it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Or So and I've always thought that with the business side of things as well. I'm like, okay, you are going to have to get to a certain point where you are like, is this going to be able to pay the mortgage? Like, because am I going to be able to live? And if you get to the stage where it's like, I don't know if I can do it all like this, well then you'll go and join the police force because you think you'll be a really good police officer. So that you've got to just realise that you don't have to stay on the same bloody path the whole way.
But I think it's that authenticity that people relate to and gravitate towards in your case, right? Like you started with Girls Uninterrupted and you're talking about stuff, you're providing validation for your listeners, and that kind of continues. That's what the podcast genre allows to do, right? It's the same with me, like talking about my journey with not drinking. Like, fuck, I would never wanted to talk about that before, but then you get a space and you're like, fuck, actually I will talk about that. And then the feedback comes in, like you're not the only one going through it, and other people kind of, they love having that appointment listening where they can go, I wonder what these guys are going to talk about this week, or wonder what these girls are going to talk about this week. It's fucking cool.
Yeah, and I feel like as well, what you are comfortable talking about evolves. You know, like what we talked about 4 years ago, like there would have been things that we never would have talked about, And then, the year before I was talking about I had bloody hemorrhoid on my 32nd birthday, and it was like,
it happens.
and then people are like, as soon as it comes out of your mouth, you're like, oh no, what have I done?
Yeah.
Come on, hold something, hold something back.
Yeah.
Then you get 20 messages going, oh my God, thank you so much for talking about that. I laughed because and they share the stories. So it is important. And and gosh, I never run out of things to say. I'm never silent. So as long as there's a job where I'm able to talk, because I'm not very good at being quiet. So
Can I look back to a niche podcast question, and it ties in your enjoyment of criminal justice and podcast? Did you do Serial?
no, okay. Can I let you in? Oh gosh, can I let you in a terrible secret?
Sure.
You don't listen to podcasts.
Not really.
Hey, can I say something?
Yeah.
Same.
Like, I have listened to a few.
unless, yeah, no, that's a lie.
I haven't listened to Serial though, no. And but do you know what's quite funny? I think it's two pronged. Sometimes I'm real late to the party, which I remember when flatmate Amy a few years back, it was like onto the Netflix bars, and I was like, what? Like binging shows, and it was like, cool, whatever, geeking out over shows, and I was like, what do you? So I kind of I don't know. I listen to them to be aware of what else is happening out there for sure. But I love music. I love music. So when I'm out running, I love listening to music. And when I'm sort of having some downtime or whatever, I love listening to music. And I also think sometimes I'm like, I'm involved in 4 a week. Sort of like, when is that going to happen?
Yeah, so you listen to those podcasts.
Yeah.
So that's,
Yeah,
I feel like you were
Yeah,
listening to
I
4 a
do.
week.
I mean,
That's-
I listened to a few episodes of that, which was incredible, the Elizabeth Holmes podcast.
Oh, yeah.
But that one was really intense, that it wasn't the kind of one that you could sort of go off and vacuum because you were like, what happened?
Yeah, yeah.
But I often feel guilty when I admit that, but I'm like, Yeah, but you know, when I worked in breakfast radio, I never before I don't listen to anyone talk on the radio, and then I was one of those people. You know, like I'd never listen to people talk on the radio.
We host a sports podcast, and I don't watch any sport.
That's a true story. And just for full disclosure, I never finished Serial, so I don't know whether Adnan did it or not.
Oh, bugger!
Waiting for the movie.
Hey, you mentioned running. We're gonna have to save it for part 2 because I know you've got a Q&A with your mum on Instagram.
Oh yeah, crikey, it's
coming
Monday
up.
night.
So
Yeah.
I am
Well,
gonna
it's the time.
I'm gonna start wrapping us up. But Shay, I'm gonna put to you. You got a little outro for us?
I don't have an outro, but what I find fascinating, and I'm thinking about this on my feet, is that where you are now is a culmination of all your kind of experiences, which is not really that ironic when you kind of think about it. But the fact that you have you've done the breakfast stuff where you're cutting and producing and doing bits and pieces, and it's all come together with Brodie Kane Media is pretty special. And what's been interesting for me is hearing stuff that you say, which is very similar to my mate here, around our journey and what we've gone through. And if we can end up anywhere near where you are right now, it'll be a pretty satisfying journey. And if that means that one of us has to go on to Dancing with the Stars, then I think it's going to be me.
Yeah, I think you could dance.
I don't.
No, I think so.
No,
But also the other thing, I know we're finishing, but
we don't have to.
we here in New Zealand, we know that we can be a bit shit towards success and tall poppy syndrome, but also I think it's really important to respect and lift each other up. Like, we're not very good at that, and I feel like when you've come from an industry where it's highly competitive, actually being away from that and seeing everything for what it is and going, oh cool, I look at PJ Harding, who's started her own podcast, and I'm like, epic. Here's a chick, they had this massive job in Melbourne, and she left and lives on a farm in Masterton and is pregnant and is with BJ, and they've got a dog and a cat, and now she started a podcast. So if you were in the media of old, you'd see that as competition, but I love now that it's you can actually gather around and be like, look at us all doing all this cool shit.
Yep.
And I think that it would have been nice if that was something we were taught a bit earlier on in our careers, but we weren't. But now you're people ring and ask me all the time about podcasts, and you're always going to give them your time because you always remember the people that gave you their time. So that's a nice thing. So bloody well done, lads, is what I'm saying. Keep going, as if I'm the Messiah to tell you that. But I think you already will. So well done.
Cheers, bro.
Nice,
Thanks so
thank you.
much. It's been awesome. It's been a really cool chat. So thanks for giving us your time. And yeah, maybe we'll do part 2 sometime down the line.
As I said, I never run out of things to say, so I'm always available.
Cool.
Cheers, Brodie.